Is it changing? Okay. This is, again, we went through this already on Tuesday. There might be a few people online who didn't hear this, but the Notify project essentially builds on the several years of work that we've been doing at COAR through the Next Generation Repositories initiative, which identified a number of use cases and technologies that would be important to implement in repositories so that we can advance different functionalities in repositories. And I guess the key thing I wanted to mention about this work is that the vision around this work is about large-scale interoperability across repositories so that we can develop more value-added services. So we're talking about a distributed landscape where we have repositories that are interoperable but distributed, and we can start to build greater functionality by connecting those repositories with other services. So this is a different vision than integrating services into and integrating functionalities into the repository system, but rather allowing repositories to interact with a number of different services that offer those functionalities elsewhere. Oops. So in order to advance a specific use case, which was the use case around connecting repositories with peer review, we had a meeting of a number of different, shall we say, services and repositories that were interested in advancing this. So our colleagues at Peer Community In and some other French colleagues at Pci and HAL, and a number of us met in January 2020 to look at a kind of a protocol that was developed by Martin Klein and Herbert van de Sample to see if it would be the right direction, technical direction for supporting this use case. And with a big help from Paul Walk, we developed a kind of technical model for this based on the discussions we had in Paris. And then we launched the Notify project. I think it was in January 2021. And since then, we've been working with those early adopter partners to implement the technologies and further develop and refine the protocol that was introduced in Paris. And Paul has been key to all of this. And so let me see what else I want to say. Again, this is looking at a distributed environment, linking resources and repositories with external peer review services. So here are our partners that are involved in the project. The principal investigators are myself, Paul Walk, who's with Antleaf, Eloy Rodriguez with University of Minho, and Martin Klein with Los Alamos National Laboratory. We have some advisors, Herbert van de Sample and Patrick Oxtenbach, who's at Ghent University. And here are our implementing partners. And before I turn it over to Paul, I'd just like to remind you that we had a wonderful announcement a few days ago that we received $4 million, will be receiving $4 million from the Arcadia Fund to further develop and expand and accelerate our work on the Notify project. So that's $4 million over 4 years. And we're very excited. We'll be getting started with the funded aspect of this project in July. And now I will turn it over to Paul to give you an overview of the technical aspects of the project.
Thank you, Kathleen. So before I really dive into the technical stuff, I just want to mention a few sort of aspects of context here, because this is important. Sorry, I'm going to have to keep turning and looking at the slides because it was a late night last night. So the important parts to think about in terms of context are, first of all, that we have this distributed network of repository systems. And that means what we have, more importantly, is a distributed network of resources under distributed control. So this is one way of immunizing our environment from monopolistic tendencies, shall we say. We have the web, which is now a very mature protocol. And it means that if we use the web technologies, then we are going to be playing into the mainstream of the world's infrastructure, which is an important consideration. I think in the past, our domain has had a tendency to sort of reinvent library-specific technologies or repository-specific technologies. And nowadays, I think we've realized that really just going with the mainstream technologies with the web is a much more sensible thing to do. And then we have this opportunity, which is that the perception of the importance of repositories seems to be on an upward trajectory at the moment. I think preprints are getting a lot more consideration. And that means that there are services being created, or at least being planned and have been created in some cases to exploit the availability of preprints in repositories. So that's the sort of context that we're working in. And then I want to outline some technical principles, really. So the first thing is we're dealing with what we call a resource-oriented architecture. So the important, and the word resource here means a thing in a repository for the sake of this discussion. So something which is typically at the end of a URL in the web architecture, that a resource is a thing at the end of a URL. That's what we're talking about when we say resources. So the architecture is resource-oriented. What this means is that we're focused on the resources and not the systems. Although everything we're doing in this conference is around repositories and Notify is certainly focused on repositories to a large extent, it's not the systems that really matter, it's the resources in the systems which we're focused on. And so to be resource oriented means that we, in computer programming, there's this notion of pass by copy or pass by reference. So you either pass content from one process to another, or you pass a pointer to the content. You don't move the content, you just pass pointers around. And this is how the web works. The URL is the pointer. So we are very much in the pass by reference paradigm of this work. I've talked about distributed network. And the final point is we're interested in a general solution. It's just not cost effective to keep creating new plugins every time you want to connect your repository in some way to some other service. So if we can find a way to have a more universal approach to this, then we can make one investment and then the subsequent investments can be very small or much smaller than they would otherwise be. So getting technical now. So Notify is based on two open standards, both from the W3C. The first is the linked data notification standard, which is a protocol for enabling asynchronous messaging. So that's the sending of messages from one system to another in an asynchronous way, very much like email for humans. This is somewhat like email for systems. That architecture is really very simple. It has a number of logical components which are in the diagram there. So we have a sender which sends notification to a receiver. The receiver has an inbox to collect these notifications. That inbox is just a thing at the end of a URL. So you're sending to a URL using HTTP. So it's all of the standard web technologies. And then you have a consuming service, which is taking notifications from that inbox and acting on them in some way. The other standard we're using is activity streams 2, which is a vocabulary for describing activities on the web, typically. And we're trying to, as much as possible, just use these standards, not invent anything new, not create new standards. We are having to decorate them slightly, add a little more to the vocabularies, but activity streams 2 is going to get us an awful long way. So I'm going to walk through an example use case to try and give a sense of how this works. My clicker is working today, so this will be a bit smoother. Okay, so imagine we have a repository on the left and a peer review service on the right. And both of these services have enabled the Notify protocol. So both of them have an inbox, and both of them have a way of sending notifications. And the repository has a preprint in it, the green box there. And the preprint has a URI. So we call this URIP for the sake of argument. So something triggers a request for a review. Perhaps the corresponding author who owns the preprint in the repository clicks a button and says, I would like to offer this preprint for review. So the repository system sends a notification to the peer review service, and it's a simple request. Please consider this item for review. Now note that it's not sending the preprints to the peer review service, it's simply sending the URL. So the preprint stays where it is in the repository. And the peer review service considers this request. I mean, we don't know how they do that. It doesn't matter. It might be a human process, it may be an automated process. But at some stage, it sends an acknowledgement back and says, yeah, we're prepared to review this preprint, or at least consider it for review. We're going to start our process, whatever that is, for review. And you notice that it includes that original URL. So it's referring to, again, to that preprint on the repository. So now the repository can take whatever action it wants to do. So it might want to put a little badge on the preprint splash page saying this is now under review. It might want to notify the corresponding author that this has happened, whatever it needs to do. So time passes. There's some things going on in the review service. We don't know what's going on there. Don't particularly care. And then eventually a review happens. So the review service creates a review, gives that review a URI. So that's URI R. This is the blue box on the right. And then it simply sends a notification to the repository saying, we have created this review. It has the URL URI R, and it refers to preprints with URIP. So what's happened there is it's connected essentially those two things. So each of them now has a link back to the other. What we've done there is created bi-directional links. And then the repository is free to take whatever action it wants to do there. So perhaps it almost certainly would want to include the link to the review in the metadata for that preprint in the repository, probably put a link on the splash page, notify the author, whatever it needs to do. But the point is these are now linked to each other. So I'm just going to I'm not going to go into this in great detail because we don't have much time, but I just want to show you the sorts of patterns. So these are what we call the payload. So this is the information which is actually sent in the notification. It's for the more technical minded, it's all of it is in RDF. This is part of the W3C standard. And the particular serialization that's used is called JSON LD. So the amount of information that's actually sent in the notification is quite small. If you compare that to the sorts of metadata records that we're used to shipping around in repository systems, this is quite minimal. And that's because, again, we're not passing by copy, we're just passing links as much as possible. So you'll notice that many of the properties in that JSON LD on the right are actually URLs to various things. The little bit of code in the bottom left of the screen there is, I put that there just to show you that is so far all that we have added to the standard. So we've done very minimal additions for Notify. And that's just to show that the documentation for the standard, for the patterns, and we've identified half a dozen patterns for notifications already, and they're documented in this way. So it explains what each of the properties is, whether it's mandatory, optional, that kind of thing. You can go to the website and see all of this. So very quickly, this is how we are documenting what we call scenarios. So the use case that I just walked through, we call that a scenario in Notify, actually. And we're documenting them in this way. We're using what's called a swim lanes approach. So you'll see there are 3 columns. The column on the left represents the processes going on in the repository. column on the right, the processes going on in the review service. And in the middle are the notifications going between those two systems. And you can, on the website, you can click on those notifications and drill down and see all of the payloads and the details and so on. But that gives a sense of, you know, what is effectively a fairly simple exchange of messages. So we have a little bit of supporting infrastructure already. We have the documentation website, which has been up for some time. It's had a few rounds of review, so it's pretty good. It's pretty solid now. And we also have some fairly basic test infrastructure, and part of the project, which is about to start with the funding that we've received, is to do this a lot more thoroughly. But there are some test inboxes running, which you can, if you're developing Notify with your repository, then you can send messages to the test inbox, so at least you can see what's being sent and how it would be received and how it would look and so on. Okay, and this is where I hand over to Kathleen, who just ran away. Shall I tell a joke? I'm not following, sorry. Oh, okay.
Sorry. I should have put a little placeholder in between those two slides. And we have a really interesting video that we were just sent. So that's why I was talking to Fabio. We have a video from Harvard, a demo of what they've done between their two, the data repository and the publication repository. So we'll put that up after the break. Yeah, so we'll do that when Andrea's presenting the DSpace example, which is after the break, which is like a 10-minute break today that we'll do. So I think now we can turn it over to Thomas. I think it's Thomas who's here with us today. Fabio?
Yes, it is. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay, great. So
And
I'm going to
I
share
think
my
we can hear you today, Thomas.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so I'm going to try to share my screen. Yeah, it looks like it works. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, but maybe
Not yet.
a little bit of a lag time. Sometimes.
Okay,
I can see it, Thomas. Sorry.
Ah, okay. So I do it again. So you can see it.
Not yet. No, now it's okay. It's not full screen, but it is okay.
Yeah, we can see it now, Thomas. So
Okay, so I'm trying to make it full screen. Is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay, Thomas.
Thanks.
You see it full screen. Great.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to present peer community in the context of the COAR Notify project. So before, just a few words about peer community in. So we with Denis Bourguet and Benoît Facon 5 years ago, and then Marjolaine Hamelin, who works at INRAE, joined us recently. So it's a free recommendation process of preprints based on peer reviews. So we started this project because we think that there are problems in science that should be solved. There are science quality issues, and there is a big problem of the costs of the publication system itself. So the first bullet points are about the science quality issues, publication bias, problems in the statistical treatment of data, the methods that are not clear, the data that are not available, etc., etc. So we have a problems of reproducibility with up to 60% of the studies that are not reproducible. And this is a huge problem. And also there is a problem of the cost of the publication system, because in the STM, Science, Technique and Medicine, the global cost is about 10 billion euros per year for 3 million articles published, which leads to an average cost for the society of about 3,000 euros per article. And this is a huge amount of money. And most laboratories and most researchers from the South, of course, cannot afford this kind of cost. So we started PCI with the aim of solving this problem, and we want to create some communities of researchers handling the evaluation through peer review and recommending publicly preprints in their scientific fields. So this would be a way to replace the current publication system or to be in addition with the current publication system. So the preprints are deposited in preprint server or open repositories and open archives, so bioRxiv, archive, Zenodo, HOL, the digital CSIC, etc., etc. And the communities are thematic. So we have a community in ecology, one in evolutionary biology, one in genomics, etc., etc. So these are the 15 peer communities that are currently functioning. So we started with PCI evolutionary biology, and we created a number of them, and we ended this year with the opening of PCI microbiology. So they are mainly in natural sciences currently, but this can change. So there are some differences with the classic publication system and some similarities. So I'm going to try to show you the workflow just for you to understand what we are talking about. So you are an author, number one, and you have just written an article. You are happy with your article, with your science article, and you want to submit it to a PCI. So what you have to do first is to deposit your data, scripts, and codes into dedicated repositories. And then you deposit your article into a preprint server or to an open repository, an institutional archive. So then you just submit your URL of the preprint to one of the PCI websites. So for instance, PCI ecology website. And then there will be a PCI recommender handling the evaluation of your article. So there are many, many PCI recommenders playing exactly the same role as associate editors in journals. For instance, in PCI ecology, we have 400 PCI recommenders playing the role of associate editors. So if no PCI recommenders want to handle the evaluation of your article, then the article is not considered and it goes out of the system. If one of the PCI recommenders handles the evaluation of your article, then they invite reviewers to get peer reviews. And on the basis of these peer reviews, the PCI recommender makes an editorial decision. So it can reject the article, they can accept the article directly, or they can ask for modifications to the authors. And then the authors can make these modifications and deposit successive versions of the article on the open archive. At the end of the process, maybe after 2 or 3 rounds of peer reviews, then the PCI recommender will take a final decision that can be to reject the article or to accept the article. And this is the green arrow with the number 3 here on the right of the slide. And if the article is accepted, then we put a stamp signaling the peer reviews and the acceptance by the peer community on the preprint itself. Okay, this is what happens on the top right of the screen. So now the preprint is a PCI recommended preprint. And we also publish on the PCI website a public recommendation text explaining the reasons why the PCI recommender decided to accept the article. And we also publish all the editorial process, including the editorial decisions, the peer reviews, the answers of the authors, etc., etc. So everything is published on the PCI website. It is in open access, free for readers and free for authors, of course. So at the end of the process, we have PCI recommended preprints. Here on the left of the screen, you have an example of a PDF of a preprint that have been recommended by PCI evolutionary biology. And you have the publication on the right of the screen. You have the publication of the recommendation text and the editorial process on the PCI website. And you can see here the title of the recommendation, the reference of the article that has been recommended, and then below the start of the recommendation text, and below you have the peer reviews, etc., etc. So everything is in open access. There are some open peer reviews because they are public and transparent for the readers. The data are open, the codes are open, and this is a final, valid, findable, and citable article that can replace an article published in a journal. So there is no need to publish your article in a journal, in a normal journal, when you have reached this step. However, most authors do want to publish their articles in journals because they need that for their evaluation, to be recruited, to get postdocs, to get grants, etc. So we provide the authors with a solution if they want to publish their articles. So they can directly transfer their PCI recommended preprints to the peer community journal, which is a very recent journal that functions in diamond open access, so free for readers and free for authors, and it belongs to PCI. Or the authors can just submit the article to the many PCI-friendly journals that are journals that have a specific commitment to PCI, and also they can submit to any other journals that would accept the submission of preprints. So the PCI-friendly journals have the specific commitment, and they would consider the evaluation by PCI. And we have three categories with very high commitment where they publish systematically the articles that are recommended by PCI. There is a second commitment where they answer the authors very fast in 5 days to tell them if further peer reviews are necessary or not. And there is a very low commitment with the third category with journals that just may use or not the evaluation of PCI. So if the authors use this system of PCI, then the results are accessible to all and right away because it uses preprints. There is a large transparency of data, methods, scripts, code IDs, etc., and also of the evaluations. The editorial policy of journals is replaced by a clear and argued public recommendation text that is written by the recommenders of PCI. There is a single evaluation set that can be used for many journals, for the PCI-friendly journals, and also for the other journals. And there may be some big savings for the research agencies, research institutes, etc., because a paper with this system costs about 150 euros at equilibrium, instead of the 3,000 euros in average that I showed you before. So this would be a mean to break the publisher's business, for the big publisher's business, because it is in diamond open access. So how is it integrated with the COAR Notify project? So this screen is divided into two parts. There is the left part and the right part. So on the left, this is what we have already done. This is already functioning, okay? And so I'm explaining it. So when PCI makes some reviews and wants to issue some public recommendations, there is a notification using the COAR Notify tool. Okay, so we have an outbox that sends a notification to the Open Archive where the preprint is located. And this, with this notification to the inbox of the Open Archive, leads to some actions. And this action is that the information of the review and the recommendation is displayed for the readers in the Open Archive. And the second thing is that there is a link to the PCI reviews and recommendation to the PCI website that is present and displayed in the Open Archive. So this is already functional in the test sites between PCI and HAL, which is the main open repository in France. And it has to be developed between PCI and Digital CSIC for in the coming weeks and months for the pilot project. And on the right, you have what we have to do. So this is not done yet, and we have to develop it. So it's the other way around. On the Open Archive, when an author wants to submit an article to PCI, there will be a notification sent to the inbox of PCI, and this will lead to the creation of a pre-submission in PCI. And then there will be manual activities like the validation of the pre-submission by PCI, managing board, a finalization of the submission by the authors on the PCI, where they will clearly put all the metadata of the article, etc., etc. And this, after being completely validated, and if a recommender handles the evaluation of the article, there will be a notification to the Open Archive to clearly signify, to clearly notify the Open Archive that now the article enters the peer review process. So this has to be developed. It is not well yet done. It will be developed soon between PCI and HOL, and we hope also between PCI and Digital CSIC. And of course, afterwards, it will be between PCI and any other Open Archive that will have a in-box and out-box of the COAR Notify project. So basically, this is whole. Thank you very much, and we will reply any questions you want to ask us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Thomas and Denis. And I said last time that you are charting the course for many of us, both in terms of your adoption of the Notify technology, but also just the new model of peer review that you're implementing, which is very innovative and in a way where we hope that Notify will help to generalize what you're doing to other services. So I think we could stop now for some questions. And there's a couple hands up in the room, and maybe online. I'd ask people to put your hand up if you have a question. Martha.
Thank you, Thomas. Martha Whitehead from Harvard, well, chair of COAR. This is so exciting in so many ways, and I just wanted to be sure I understand a piece of it. There was a slide early on where you had one repository, and then you had the repository where the preprint action was happening. But at the end, you talked about really you're just trying to make connections between any repositories and the PCI process. And the latter is very exciting to me because I think, for example, the Harvard archive would be one that I'd like to see connecting in with this. So do I have that right? And maybe, I don't know if you can go back to the early slide I was referring to. I think it was about the third slide in the sequence that showed two different repositories, which doesn't fit with what Paul was saying earlier about not moving resources. I just want to make links between them.
So can you see my screen? Can you hear me?
Yes.
So can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So basically you are right. So this is the right slide. Yeah.
Well,
so,
it was very early on, actually. It was an earlier slide. Yeah, keep going back. Here. Okay. So you've got.
Yeah. Okay. It was the list of the archives. This one?
No. Sorry, you had it up just a second ago where you showed repository and then you showed preprint repository.
How does it work?
Diagram there.
Yeah, okay. So that's right. You are completely right. So we are developing this with HAL and Digital CSIC, but we want to have it absolutely universal. Okay. So we want the relationship between PCI and the repositories to be universal. So the preprint server here can be any preprint server or can be any Open Archive, any institutional, universitarian archives, etc. So it can be Harvard repository, it can be HAL, it can be Digital CSIC. We hope it could be also OSF preprint. It can be anything. So
and looking at looking at it again, I realized that what I was looking at was a repository that has the data and scripts and
okay, I see. Yeah.
This could be
okay. So this is not yet implemented. Okay. I mean, in the workflow of PCI, there is this that is mandatory. So the authors have to deposit their data, scripts, and code in repositories. But this is not yet included in the COAR Notify process here. But we may do that, and we don't know how to do that yet, but we have to think about it.
And the notification we are doing with HAL and probably with CSIC, it could be done with any preprint server and any repository in the future. It's a proof of concept, and then it's only a mean of developing an inbox and then an outbox in our side, and it will be the interoperability will be easy.
Yeah. Are there any questions online by any chance? Any hands up online? Carla says not at the moment. I mean, just to, to follow up with you about the scripts and the code, and I think I already had a early conversation with Natalie from CCSD about what it would look like to have a French ecosystem that is notify enabled. So I think it'd be really interesting to explore that as well when we, after we get the early implementations working. Okay, so again, Denis, sorry, I keep looking at you on the screen, but I'll try to remember to look at the camera. Thank you so much for all your contributions, your support for our project, and we'll be seeing a lot of each other soon, starting in July when we receive the funding. So thanks again for taking the time to.
Thanks to you, Kathleen. That's nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're moving on now to, I don't have the agenda right in front of me, but I think it's the Latin American Lautaro's presentation. Fabio? Oh, no, it's you and, yeah, it's, sorry, it's Isabel and Pandelis.
Hello, so it's number 2. Okay, so good morning and good afternoon to our remote participants. Also, as you realized, PCI guys were also mentioning that Digital CSIC, the repository here in the council, is going to be also participating in the scenario. But now we are not going to talk about that scenario, but another one that we are implementing with a scholarly society here in Spain for experimental psychology, and with the advocacy organization on Open Scholar. So this is the notified scenario that is a work in progress. So what we are going to show is what we have already done in a collaboration between the repository and a journal that moved away from a commercial publisher and became an overlay journal. We don't have the to change. Is that? Okay, so how we ended up doing this work together? It's because in 2016, we collaborated in a different project that was funded by OpenAir, and this was to develop and to implement a module to support open peer review on top of institutional repositories. So this is the way Pandelis and I started to work together. Together with this space provider, this module was developed and installed on top of a repository. It's a service that allows to do inside the repository open peer reviews for the open access contents. So the module works that a CSIC author that has some open access content on the repository sends invitations to other scholars to do open peer reviews. So this was the workflow. This is an example of such open access content on a repository. It's a teaching material produced by a CSIC researcher. And then this item got 3
open peer reviews that are those links that you see with the green circle. So if you click on them, it leads to other items on the repository, and the open peer reviews with the open identities of the reviewers, and with the reviews completely open access. So this is the basis for the collaboration that we are developing now.
Okay, so now about our present collaboration, I'll spend just a couple of minutes to explain what we mean in our scenario, and what we mean when we say overlay journal. We had a discussion 2 days ago with Bjorn that gave the keynote speech here. He was all against journals, but I felt that it was necessary to do like some disambiguation between what is a journal and a publisher. In our case, when I say journal, from now on, when I'm talking about overlay journals, by journal, I just mean the community of researchers that is organizing peer review and offers the services of validation to any given research article. So in a sense, we're talking about a peer community, like the peer communities that were formed by this initiative of peer community that we just had this wonderful presentation just before. So when I'm saying journal, I mean this, I'm just talking about the community of researchers, of scholars. And then of course, scholars cannot publish themselves, so they need a publisher. Or that's what we thought until now. I mean, until now, and for some people like myself, we knew for many years that I was wondering, why don't we publish in repositories, since they are actually publication platforms, and they can offer all the services that the publisher can offer. So this is the case, this is our case. We're talking about a journal in the sense of a community of scholars, of a scientific society, which is a society of experimental psychology, Spanish Society of Experimental Psychology, that used a commercial publisher to publish their articles, and were convinced at some point to abandon the publisher and start publishing in the repository, the digital CSIC repository. So we're talking about a collaboration between a society and a repository. The society offers all the services, editorial services that any journal offers, like peer review, like basically we organize the peer review, and then the repository is offering all the publication services, which we present here in this next slide. So for example, when we're talking about the repository, was this your slide or my slide? Okay. It's the second time, but we still haven't, maybe we need a third presentation. Okay, so the repository is offering all the publication services, like creating a collection, specific collection for the journal. It offers the open peer review model, which, as Isabel said, is what enables this collaboration actually, and collaborates with us, with the journal, in order to handle all the publication workflows. It assigns the DOIs and interacts with DataCite and other indexing services. And on our side, we provide all the editorial services, like performing the peer review and interacting with the authors, offering formatting templates so that the authors can format their articles for the final published versions, and so on. Now it's yours.
Yeah, it's the same. Okay, so this went live at the beginning of February this year. So the society left the publisher, and we made this formal announcement in February that they were becoming an overlay journal, and they are already a new interface for the journal. So is that WordPress. So the researchers in the society created the website, the new interface, and then in the repository we open a space for them. Is this collection. So in fact, the overlay journal has two interfaces. One, which is the WordPress, which is, just to catch the attention of readers that there is a new article, and then when they click there, it takes readers to the items in the repository. So as you see, we have already a number of articles. And from my perspective, it's been really a very pleasant surprise, because this started in February which was like the other day, and we already have some articles. So I was saying, you know, the people in the society were really motivated for the change. So this is what is already running. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. This is like real cases from the psychological journal on the repository. So we are uploading everything, all the versions of the work. So the preprint, that could be that one there. So with all the metadata that has been received by the society, and we uploaded it on the repository. And then you see that it starts getting some open peer reviews that are used, are generated by the module I explained before, which are those, you know, when you click on those links that have the green circles, those are the open peer reviews. And this could be, you know, an example of the metadata record of the review that is also a separate item in the repository with the DOI, and clicking there, you see the whole text of the review, and you can see the identity. So this is what we are doing now. And Pandelis is going to explain you how Notify is going to make this workflow better, quicker, and more agile.
Okay, so let me explain again that we're talking about a traditional journal that just switched from the publisher to the repository. So in terms of the author, the repository is silent at the background. The author continues to interact. The entry point, the point of communication is still the journal. So the authors submit their papers, as they have always done, to the journal. And it is the journal that is, when after an initial screening, when it's decided that the paper will advance to peer review, the journal uploads the preprint to the repository. And begins once the preprint is saved at the repository, it's assigned a handle, and we create the item as you saw before. We start the review process. So we start inviting reviewers, and reviewers submit the reviews again to the journal, and these are uploaded again through the open peer review module to the repository. So both, as we saw, both the journals, the articles and the reviews live in the repository, and they're linked between each other. And then once after a certain number of reviews has been submitted, there is an editorial decision. The editorial decision may request a new revision. So we go back to this step and we follow the same procedure until finally the editorial decision is either to reject, in which case the preprint and the reviews stay in the repository, and but they're not included in the collection of the journal. So, and after that, if the editorial decision is positive, then the article is published to the journal, which means that we produce a summary publication on the website of the journal. And at the same time, the item at the repository receives a DOI, and the metadata are updated and sent also to indexing services. Now, here is where Notify will prove very, very useful in our case, in our scenario, because all this communication at the moment, all the communication between the journal and the repository is manual. So we have to send emails, we have to send text messages, letting know Isabel that there has been a new article deposited, and she has to tell us that she accepted and she uploaded the article. So all this communication is manual, and of course, it's fine for the moment, and maybe it could be like it could be also in the future with, if the workload remains the same, it could be okay. But the important thing with Notify is not just that it will make our lives easier, but it will enable the possibility to scale this kind of protocols. So maybe we're thinking about, this will be our last slide, we're thinking about how we can implement this protocol, not just with one repository and one journal, but create a new landscape of interconnected repositories and journals that can perform the same functions and services. And of course, for that, we need Notifieds will be absolutely crucial, as you understand. So this is where, for example, these are the types of notifications. This is on the website of the Notify project. It's the scenario 6, which shows that you can start from the overlay journal, and what these notifications will look like when, for example, in the first instance, the journal will ask the repository to upload the new preprint, and then the repository will answer back that it has been already done. And in next stages, when there is a review, again, there's going to be a notification from the repository to the journal, so that we know that the journal knows that has been some new evaluation of the article, and can notify also the authors. And finally, there are more notifications when there is a final version of the paper that needs to be, whose metadata needs to be updated and pushed forward to the indexing services.
Okay, so what's next? So this whole collaboration is ongoing, but now we have to go and implement the notified technologies. So this is what we plan to do over the next months. There's already a development, a basic notified development for these space repositories that our colleagues are going to explain now in a while. And then the next step is that this space development is going to be extended for this space GRIS, because our repository is running on that version of this space. And the two of us, or like the two groups, will have to implement the notify technology. So we will have to implement the notify extension for this space GRIS, and WordPress, which was that other interface that the journal has now, will have to enable a notify plugin, so that we can start to replace the manual notifications with this more agile and automated notification system. And of course, we want this to be an inspiring case for others, for other journals that are thinking about moving away from commercial publishers, for those scholarly societies that are thinking about creating diamond open access journals, and see that there is a real possibility of doing this on top of repositories, and of course, using Notify for that. So thank you.
Are there any questions? Oh, there's a question online. Excellent. On? Is this still on? Yeah. Okay. Want me to read it out? Pandelis. This is a question. You're absolutely right to disambiguate journals and publishers. Or these are comments, not questions. Oh, okay. Now there's a question to Isabel. Have you compared usage stats, number of downloads with the journal platform and that of digital CSIC? Yeah, but I think maybe there's a misunderstanding, because have you compared usage statistics? So I think this person, Irina, I think, is misunderstanding that the article is actually on the repository. You cannot download the article from the journal. It's just a link from the WordPress platform to the article. So there would be no way of comparing downloads, since all of the downloads go to the.
That's interesting. I'm not sure if we had complete usage statistics from the old publisher. The old publisher basically is just deleting everything. This is another very interesting issue with publishers that I'm just. They are deleting all the content. They don't care about the DOIs. That we have to do something now. We have to solve the problem of what happens to the old DOIs that will. The DOIs, yeah, the DOIs, yeah, will stop. If we leave it to the previous publisher, the DOIs will stop resolving, and they will just point to empty or whatever. I don't know what they're gonna do. They're gonna bring down they're gonna delete all the content. That's what they said. They're giving us 6 months so before we solve this problem. So yeah, that's another thing that I didn't know was working like that, and I was surprised to find out.
Journal. So it had a very good number of usage statistics. And maybe, you know, we can collect usage statistics because we have them on the repository, but still, I mean, we only had 3 months of existence. So it's too early. It's too early, but I mean, we will.
Yeah, I also have a question. So if I'm a user coming into the repository interface, not going through your WordPress, what's the difference between what does the repository record show that would indicate that it's part of the journal versus it's just a preprint? So if the journal does the review and does not decide to endorse, what is the difference in the record? And the reason why I ask this is because I've been part of a preprint working group, and there's a lot of sensitivity for authors around having publicly available that the preprint has been rejected to a journal. Yeah.
Okay, so if you go to the collection of the journal, there is a very clear column that says preprint or article. So article means that it's published, preprint means that it has not been published. If it's not an article, it's a preprint, it means that it has been rejected, okay? Or it's still in process, it's still under process. So some of these preprints will eventually become articles. If like 1 year has passed by, then you're certain that it has been rejected. Which means you can click into this preprint and you can see the reviews and you can understand why it has been rejected by this particular journal. And of course, we anticipate that there are authors that don't like that. And since you rejected my article, then I don't want it to be there. So actually, that's the problem, because what we do is we also try to create a new understanding of how preprints are already there. If you feel confident to send your work to the journal, then this work should be public. So that's the whole idea of preprints. So if you're not, if you don't look favorably at preprints, then you should not submit to our journal. We make this clear first, and second, we have some other issues. I don't know to get into this in detail now. We also have people who do not want, reviewers who do not want to review openly. So again, we have this issue, and what we say in the journal about this this possibility, because reviews are asking editors to send them their comments confidentially. So we say in our journal website that we accept these comments confidentially, which is how peer review has been done until now. There have been secret comments to editors. It's like a system of favors. If it's not public, then I'm doing you a favor to help you decide whether you're going to accept or reject the manuscript. So if you want to send some confidential comment to the editor, you can still do that. But the editors, of course, are not. It's in their responsibility to accept or not these comments. And we encourage editors to base their editorial decisions mostly on the published and signed reviews, to put more weight on these reviews. But then again, editors have this this flexibility to handle the manuscript as they see fit.
So another question has come in, probably for Pandelis, but so it's, isn't a single repository a constraint for authors? At PCI, we receive articles from many and diverse repositories.
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, now it has been, we did it with CC for various reasons, because we already had this collaboration, because it has the open peer review module, which is very important for organizing and managing these peer reviews. And because it's a Spanish Society of Experimental Psychology, and CSIC is the repository of the Spanish National Research Council. So, it was a very natural choice to start with CSIC. But as we said, the idea is to extend that to any repository that will become part of this network that we envision. And of course, Notify is what will will eventually enable this interoperability between these networks, but these repositories. But at the moment, it's it was the only solution, and to start and showcase this protocol.
Pandelis, I don't know if you hear me.
Go ahead, Denis.
Dennis, yeah, I have a question concerning this, because one of the problems you can have is that the other preprint server don't want you to put a final version of the paper, published version of the paper in their preprint server. Because you will give a DOI to the published paper, and for example, bioRxiv won't accept this, and probably other preprint server or repositories won't do this, I guess. No.
So bioRxiv, we don't collaborate with bioRxiv.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
know.
problem.
Don't.
And you know very well that I have written about that.
We know that. Yes.
I mean, we have very clear for many years now what the model should be, and we have certain rigidity about what is good and what is bad. And those people who do not want to collaborate in this model, then they're out of our out of our workflow.
Good point. Yep.
I mean, we as the repository, we are not influencing the scholarly society on their policies, because we are the repository and they are the society. But I mean, I know that you went through this extensive review of the policy of the journal and guidelines for authors, and everything is transparent and is completely open. And if somebody is considering sending a submission to this journal, has all the information about the new workflow. And it's like any other journal. You read the guidelines and then you decide if you are interested in that option or you are not interested in that option. And then you are free to choose.
Okay, the questions are popping up. So I think Paul, okay, Paul's saying no. Yeah, so let's go to Eloy's question and then we'll move on to, or comment. It's a comment. Go ahead.
It's just a very short comment from the Notify point of view. So I think one of our challenges is try to make Notify kind of agnostic of the different policies and workflows that both repositories and overlay services want to implement. So because I think there will not be one size fits all or one only policy, and Notify will need to support different policies and different workflows, and we should not try from the Notify point of view to impose a single model, and so, on the contrary, we need to try to make it kind of agnostic. I know probably there will be some cases or circumstances that will be make it more difficult, but I think this is something that we should try to do.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to scale this, so it means we have to support a number of different models. Thank you both again. You all, I wanted to acknowledge your leadership in this area and your amazing contributions to the COAR Next Generation Repository Initiative and now the Notify project. And we're looking forward to continue working with you. So thanks again, guys. So let's put Lotaro's slides up, please. And as usual, we're running late. Okay. Lotaro, welcome again. And I hand the floor over to you.
Thank you again. Thank you. I am Lautaro Matas from La Referencia. We are the regional network, Latin American network of repositories. We developed an open source platform that is installed in all those countries, and we are including also Spain as an external Latin America because the tradition of collaboration and the language. So today I will tell you a brief description of what we are trying to do with Notify. So let me give some context. Of course, we have in our hands, we have as an aggregator, we have the repositories of the different universities and institutions of science and technology of our region. And we are also having in our region other great initiatives based on the diamond journals like La Red League and Cielo. And on the other hand, we have at national level, we have a very large collection of CVs, of research profiles, like Curriculum Lattes in Brazil, that is probably one of the biggest CV systems in the world. So, and we also have at national level, at funding agencies level, national CRIS system, research management systems, and also at, it was not me. I can do that. Okay. So and also at institutional level, that there's a lot of CRIS system, and typically the repositories at an institutional level are in the side of the libraries of the institutions, and the CRIS systems are mostly in another part of the institution, like the research vice rectories and they mostly are not connected. They don't have connection between what's happening in the repository and what's happening in the CRIS system. And at national level, the national CV systems and research profile system, they don't have a clue of what's happening in the repository side. Many researchers declares their production as reference, but they don't link the contents, the items, their articles deposited in the repository. So, and even they declare in the different ways. And so to deal with that, we started 2 years ago a project with EPIC in order to link that and certify what is happening in the repositories, between the repositories and the CV system. So then Notify came to the scene, and we have seen a great opportunity to do this properly. So today I will present some very brief high level vision of what we think that Notify can do for this problem, at least in our region. So this first use case is a repository asking for certification of or endorsement over an item deposited in the we want to use Notify to request to the CV or CRIS system a certification about that this item is part of a research profile, for example. So we want to use Notify to get a response in the other side, but also send the link of the resource at the repository, and also receive a link from the CV system in order to cross-link the two systems, and also modify the item metadata to reflect that that item is part of a research profile or a research management system in some way. Typically, the founders have used the research profiles in order to give them funds, and so it's important to reflect that in the repository. We think that we can also use this feedback from the CRIS system of the national system to endorse, to put marks of endorsement of the items, and to use that later to build indicators over the repositories in order to have measures about the quality of certain part of the collection. So this is, for us, this is important at very different levels. We are discussing also the research assessment and using the repositories as a source for research assessment, and we think that Notify will be very useful. And I have this case is the same, but from the other side, because is the CRIS system, when an author needs to declare an item in the repository as part of their own profile, we can use notify in order to connect also the two systems. I can show in the next slide we are already working with Cebelates, with the Big Institute of Scientific Information in Brazil, a use case, not a notified use case for the moment, but an use case of first searching using given the CV system a search AIP to look for items deposited in the repository in order to give an author or a researcher a way to look for their own production in the repository. And then we think we can use notify in order to connect the two system, interchange the links, and also put at the end and update the metadata and reflect that in the repository. Because in this moment, we don't have any way to notify the repository that that item is part of the research profile. So the idea is to use notify for this, to notify, to acknowledge the repository that this item is now part of the research profile. And again, use all that marks to generate later indicators and quality measures over the repositories. So this is, oops, I think I have, okay, this is more of the same. There are different approach on this, because at first, from some to deploy these capabilities in Latin America, we are planning to implement first the notify at aggregator level, not only for this use case, but also to provide implementation, a general implementation for other use cases that can work at aggregator level. And also because the EPIC case, the Brazilian case that we are developing already has a query interface for the CVIP AIP. So as a first implementation, we can use that connection in order to respond to the repositories about the contents in the national CV system, and later we want to move that to implement that in the CV system. So what next are some challenge that we see in this process? Okay, we are, as I said, we are starting with the big, but this is only the beginning. We want to build on top of the work that we are doing with them, but we want to extend this experience to the rest of the countries of La Referencia, because we have different and useful cases. For example, in Argentina, they have a national law that we need to fulfill, that is any result of research funded with public funds needs to be in the repository by law. And we think that notify will help to enforce that law, connecting also the national CV and founder system with the repositories, and even the certification, using the certification use case. So one of the biggest challenges for us in this moment is to first have a general enough repository software implementation, because this case is not exactly the same of the open review, the peer review case. So we need to have good and general implementation at the repository level, because we need to have an easy way to deploy this in Latin America. And of course, one of the problems in the region that we have been discussing yesterday is the level of the modernizing of our network, because we have very old version of the software. We are mostly have disk-based version, like 28 or near 90%. So we need to also update and deploy the new versions of the repository software all over the network in order to have a massive implementation of the use case. But we have good repositories that will participate in the first in this first implementation, and we are hoping that that will be a model for the rest, and they will follow. So I think that it will be all from my part. Thank you again.
Thanks, Lautaro. Stay here for a second in case there are questions. I just think the interoperability aspect of this is so important to emphasize, because we're working with different organizations, services that are applying different use cases. So we have the Latin American use case, PCI, we have CSIC, and so on. But the notify protocol will be generic enough that you will be able to connect now, not just with the CV system, the repositories in Latin America, but also with Pandelis's overlay journal or with peer community in. So the potentiality here is so great. It's very, very exciting, I think. Are there any questions for Lautaro? Any questions online, Carla? Nope. Okay. So thank you again, Lautaro. This is very exciting, and we're looking forward to working with you on this. Yeah. So our next speaker is online. It's Masaharu from Japan, and he's going to present the Japanese use case for the adoption of the notify protocol. So is Masaharu here?
Yes.
He's not here?
Can you
Oh,
hear
there
me?
he is. Yes, maybe turn up your volume a little bit if you can, or we'll try to turn it up here.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, that's better,
Is it-
Masaharu.
Wait,
Thank you.
Okay.
So we're trying to,
Yes.
yeah, could you, if you turn your camera on and share your screen?
Okay. And
There, we can see you now. Hi, Masaharu.
hello. Hi, I'm Masaharu Hayashi from Research Center for Open Science and the Data Platform, National Institute of Informatics, Japan. Today, I'd like to talk about our thinking, what's thinking about the COAR project use case.
Perfect. Yeah, we can see your, thank you. Thank you, Masaharu. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay, thank you. In this slide, our context, NI start to provide NI research data cloud, we call NI RDC from fiscal year 2021. This cloud service aims to provide comprehensive support for research activity from management, publish, and discovery of research data. The repository service we call Agile Cloud. Agile Cloud is a part of our NIRDC. In this project, in order to get a clue to the idea, we are concerned how COAR Notify can be used in NIRDC from the viewpoint of repository. On to next slide. NIRDC aims to support research activity. Research activity have various stages like planning, experiment, collaboration analysis, and writing paper, publication data or paper. And there are various tools in each phase to support research activity, like a research data management system, data management planning system, a data processing system, a QSN system, and discovery system. I think the repository support research activity. The repository should require to corroborate these as research support service. So we think that the COAR Notify can be used for service integration between these service and repository. This slide show our idea of use case of COAR Notify for the data management plan, DMP. DMP is a plan for management disclosing research data, and the MIDMP, machine actionable DMP, is an effort to make DMP machine readable so that it can be used in system as well. MIDMP has various information related to research data management like this. And the red box is that shows the information related repositories. For example, a data set has a title and description and DOI and license information and environment information. These information are often managed by a repository, and it is desirable to keep track of the activity in the repository and update the MMDMP. Sorry. And next slide, I'm going to go introducing the scenario of cooperating with the MIDMP. This is our idea, the DMP example scenario. First, RDM make a researcher make a data set in RDM. Then RDM notify the update information to the DMP. Then DMP update the MADMP, and then announce the update information to the RDM. RDM user deposit the data set into the repository to publish their data set, and the repository add the metadata and assign the DOI. Then repository notify the updates the information to the DMP. The DMP gets the repository the update information. Then update DMP, update the MADMP, and then DMP announces the update information to the RDM. So RDM can get the update information. So this is our thinking, our concerning scenario. Sorry. So I think COAR Notify may be possible to realize loosely couple the system. However, the sense of current notification vocabulary is designed to target a journal service. So I think we should define vocabulary for DMP integration action. Next slide. We current development status in NII COAR project status. We have implemented the COAR Notify function in our repository system, including propose understanding the function. And next step, I would like to link it with MIDMT based on this function. This is my final slide. Next step, I think COAR Notify is a good tool for simple and loosely coupled system integration. So we would like to consider other use case at using our research data cloud NIRDC. And I want to expand the usage scene of COAR Notify. Also, we would like to implement a COAR notify function in NIRDC. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masaharu. Thanks for taking the time. And I think we have several dimensions to the Notify project, and one of the dimensions is working at the national level. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're already discussing with France, and our Japanese colleagues are definitely going to be part of the conversation about how Notify can be used to link up national services, important national infrastructures in Japan and in other places. So are there any questions for Masaharu? Carla, are there any questions online? Not at the moment. Masaharu, thank you so much again for taking the time to present to us. I think your use case is very, very relevant for many, many other, many of us. So looking forward to working with you and your colleagues at NII. And I think we are going to take now a 5-minute break, a very quick break. And then we'll go into the platform developments. Thanks, Masaharu.
Thank you very much.
Is mainly okay. That is mainly a diamond open access ecosystem, because almost all Portuguese journals are charge no APC, are open access and charge no APC. So that project focused mainly on journals, but we decided also to use some resources that were available to support the implementation of Notify on this space to promote overlay publishing. So because of time and financial constraints, we focus the work on implementing this space on Notify on this space 5 and 6, and only on the GSP UI interface. And the aim was to really develop a minimum viable product that is being kind of a stepping stone, preparing the work that need to be done also, and is already being done in this space 7. And for that, we worked with For Science and Andrea Bolines, who I will hand over to Andrea. That was the man that really do it.
Thank you, Eloy. So where we are with implementation on the minimum viable product. It has been implemented for version 5 and 6 of this space. All the source code and documentation is available, publicly available on GitHub. You can just download and start to play around it. Your feedback is very welcome, so please feel free to drop us an email or open any discussion on GitHub to provide any feedback. And also, most important, I want to say that this is not a work that has been finished. It's an ongoing work, an ongoing effort that is still continuing with the community, and specifically together with Harvard Library, we are working in importing this minimum viable product also to the space 7. And to offer this contribution to the community for the general acceptance into the space source code. And here you find reference to the in progress work also for version 7, where you can start to look around, try this code, and see if it fits your use case as well. As said by Eloy, the minimum viable product focus mostly on one specific use case, that is the peer review to overlay journal use case, so review and endorsement in the scenario of the Notify protocol. But it's really important to note that also in the minimum viable product, we take care to start with an architecture that can be easily extended to support the other use case in the Notify project, or what we expect to discover many other use case and scenario where the Notify technology can help to establish interoperability between the network or repository and services. So in the basic scenario, what we have is to author start the submission process in the repository. And during the submission, he will ask the repository to call external service to notify external service about this new content, so that this new the external service can provide open review or eventually also endorsement. These happen when the item has been archived into repositories, finalized into repository. And when the external service make the work, so create a review or make a decision about endorsement, this decision is notified by the external service to the space. So what we have done is to create a linked data notification inbox for the space. Graphically or visually, what this means in the user interface of the repository, you can add an additional metadata where you can list the external repository service that you want to work on, and your author or your librarian can decide that for a specific item you need to interact with these external services. So this means that you, in the SIG scenario, you can put here a flag to say, or please notify Psychologica, or you can select the journal from PCI or any other initiative that we hear over the conference. From the repository manager perspective, the minimum viable product also introduced some administrative user interface where you can just review what is going on. So you will see how many review requests and endorsement requests has been sent by the repository to external services, and how many of them are still pending, how many was accepted or rejected. And you can go deeper to a specific item to see the history about this item, which notification was sent out from the repository to other system, and which notification about this item was received by the space. When everything is okay, at the end, you will get back from the review service or the journal, the overlay journal, the notification about the endorsement, the availability of the review. And this means that using this information, the space will enhance the metadata of your item, automatically establish the linkage between the repository content, the review, the open review, or the link to the overlay journal where this publication has been endorsed. I'm now just trying to present to you also the use case from Harvard that was based on the Notify protocol, but was a slightly different use case than the one that was initially planned by the Notify project. Their idea is to apply the Notify technology to the whole open science ecosystem of Harvard, where you see that there are two main components in the middle, two main repository. One is a data repository that is implemented with Dataverse, and another one is the publication repository that is implemented with this space. And their challenge was to have these two repositories talk to each other. So you often have publication in the space that are based on dataset that was deposited in Dataverse, or Dataverse that dataset deposited in Dataverse that has been used or use method decided described in a specific publication. So it's really important to establish this linkage. Also, before to go to the next slide where you have a zoom in, I want to show that there is also a preservation repository in the Harvard ecosystem. And also in this case, the plan is to use Notify because this preservation repository can be notified about the new content available in the publication repository, in the data repository, and can decide to retrieve this content from the original repository and preserve it internally. Is important. I want to recall one thing that Paul said before. When we talk about notify, we always talk about calling by reference. So don't be confused when we talk about preservation or the ingest use case. We are not pushing data to the other system. We are saying to the other system, hey, we are there. And you are invited to call us and get what you need. But it's a two-phase conversation. So this is what they are really working on right now, and is part of our work to move the minimum viable product to version 7 of this space. They will show, we have a quick video that maybe you can start, where we will see how this integration between the space and data.
Hi, welcome. This will be a brief demonstration of COAR notify announce notification between DSpace or Dash and Dataverse. This will attempt to satisfy use cases of statement of work here. First, I will start with depositing an item in which Dataverse has a data set already published, and grab the DOI over here and submit an item.
This is the interface of DSpace 7.
And we'll see down here, there's a customized workflow field here for research data. This will placing metadata in the DC data URI. We'll paste the data set DOI we have there and give it a file and deposit it.
So he has created a publication that refers to a DOI
Okay.
of
We should then see the notification over here of that new item and received April 6th at 4:01, and that is our new item. And we will see over here, we have an email the Dataverse sent out on receipt of that notification. Okay. Now we'll do the inverse of an existing item in DSpace and newly published data set Dataverse. So I have an existing item here. Let's see, receive. Yep, here it is. And I will grab the handle, which is the dash NRS, I believe. Copy that over here, and we will edit this data set here, and we'll provide a related publication. And it is of type dash NRS, and we'll paste that here. Okay, and we'll save changes, and we'll publish. All right. And on this one, we will edit, add dc.data.url here. Save. And that's saved, and that should send a notification to servers. And there you have it with the updated item, which that should link back. And that does it. That includes the display of the research data. Thank you very much.
So just to conclude, it's not working. So I will say, I don't think that necessary. Just to say, so as Andrea mentioned, this is still a work in progress, and one of our. So this is also by the way, the important acknowledgement from the people that are really doing this and bringing this to reality. And my last comment is that we have been discussing already with this space leadership. We had a meeting on Wednesday to promote the inclusion of this work, of the work that was already being done, to enable Notify in this space in one of the next releases of this space. So we are hoping that in this space 7.4 that is due, I think by November or October or November this year, or 7.5 early next year, this space out of the box will be will have this on the source code. And I think there are good prospects around this. But again, it is important that all the community, if you are this space users, also convey that message. So if you have that opportunity to the people that are on the space leadership. So we need many more voices to express this need. I think they understand it, but if more people say it, I think they will understand it even better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea and Eloy and William, for your video. I think we're going to move on directly to Tim Smith, who's going to give a brief presentation about Invenio and their use cases, their interest in using Notify. And I promise you we're going to finish at 12:45. We'll just have some concluding remarks at 12:45 because I know there are several people that need to go to the airport. So let's move on to Tim Smith, who's online. And then if there's some time left, I'll do a brief next steps update. Tim, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Very excited to be here and be part of this, even if we're a little late to the party. So I'm going to describe the Invenio platform, but first, to illustrate the use cases, I will use one of the services that's based on the Invenio platform, so that's Zenodo. So whilst the Zenodo record already has functionality, utility, there are many things about the metadata that are rarely rich when first uploaded, because a lot of the activity happens by third parties around Zenodo. Some of it is then transformed into changes on Zenodo, but lots of it is not. So there's lots of things that we'd like to be notified about. Perhaps the first and most surprising to some people is, I mean, the creation of a Zenodo record is made during a publication of an article by depositing data or software. But often the article isn't known about at the time of the deposition in Zenodo. So the backlink from Zenodo to the article is not done at the time of submission, it's done slightly after. And if this is done manually by the authors, they often forget. If it's done by an API integration, which we do have with several publishers, then we more reliably get the backlink. But there's a huge amount of articles that do not have this backlink. The next one is funders. So often the funding information is missed off. Similarly, the ORCIDs and other things are missed off. And yet on their own records, their own ORCID records or the funder sites, the enrichment happens and the correspondence is known to the Zenodo record, but then we have to go around and scrape all of those. We'd rather be notified of them. We already have some aggregators and we're working with more. As part of an Arcadia project, we worked with the astronomy community to make an aggregator that could collect together citations at any point after a Zenodo record has been created to the record and then inform us of it, but that's by a dedicated protocol from a single aggregator or a series of aggregators, and we've got further ones in the pipeline. I mean, all of these show that we would like to be notified of things around, and at the moment we do it in very specific ways in certain circumstances with certain communities. What we would love to have is a much more general notify protocol to be used on all of them. So of course, the last use case, which is the one that's being discussed directly with COAR at the moment with us, is the peer reviewing. And I know already some peer reviews use this and use Zenodo, but we don't actually implement this specific protocol yet, and we'd love to. So those are the use cases we're looking at. What are our actions? So periodically, Invenio gets updated every few years. The latest release happened a couple of years. The latest refresh started a couple of years ago, when we decided to split the platform into two flavors. One for library management, which we worked on first and released that in 2020, and another one specifically targeted at making research data management platform easier to install for anyone. So we did a first long-term stable release the end of last year. We're trying to make it feature complete now, and then we'll rebase Zenodo on top of it. So that's where all of our energy is currently going. But along came our discussions with Notify, and we'd love to integrate these, but unfortunately we have to do it at the end of that development cycle. So realistically, that's, unless things change in our development plan, it has to be the beginning of next year. Nonetheless, in the meantime, we know that many of our partners I should have said that the RDM project is not just run by CERN, but it's being created and run by over 20 different partners from around the world. And many of these partners have said to us that they are extremely interested in the platform implementing the Notify protocol. So thinking of Zenodo as a service and other services that run on top, Zenodo specifically, the simple interactions for good use cases is not sufficient. When productionizing, we always think of the challenging environment that we live in, because we are subject continually to abuse cases and denial of service attacks. And so we're thinking of how we would be implementing this when we get to it, to make it more bulletproof. So several aspects we're considering at the moment in the design phase, leading up to implementation of next year. So the reliable delivery is important to us. We're going to, as a general repository, we're going to be dealing with many different communities, many different places where peer review happens. And we want to be absolutely sure that when we dispatch requests to a variety of different potential reviewers, that we know that they've even got the request, later that they've accepted it, and all of the handshaking, the delayed retries, the non-available endpoints, all of that, we're thinking of how we automate that and how we maintain all the states internally. The rates, rate limiting. So again, in a large repository, we have all sorts of sophisticated rate limiting, and we want to make sure that these handshakes don't get around that handling. They're integrated nicely into it. So I mentioned that we've already got several aggregators integrated with dedicated protocols. We've already realized during those integrations that just being notified of a simple citation, for instance, isn't sufficient. When we want to display it in Zenodo, we often need extra information. So we found ourselves immediately calling back the API. So for every notification, we had multiple API calls and all of the handshakes after that. So we realized it would be more efficient if the payload was rich with metadata as well. So we're looking at how we can tune what's transferred at the first instance to make sure that we don't have to have multiple handshakes afterwards. The idea that we've discussed so far of having point-to-point knowledge of a trusted supplier of peer reviews is great. But as I say, in a multidisciplinary high traffic service, it would be nice if we didn't have to maintain all of those different known endpoints, when in fact they're probably going to be coming and going and common to multiple repositories. So we're thinking, like we did with the aggregators, if there were trusted hubs that could be doing the brokerage here, to avoid that each repository has to have its set of endpoints. And then finally, the system gaming and protection. So if people see there's a way to get content displayed automatically on our pages, so a peer review in this case, then they game that, and we know for certain we're going to have to build in protections to avoid that people go for the weakest point in the system and compromise something external to Zenodo to guarantee that they can get displayed in Zenodo. So we're thinking of each of these different aspects as we lead up to the implementation phase. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tim. I'm just going to stop now. We have like a couple minutes for questions, if there are questions for Eloy around DSpace or Tim related to the Invenio. Are there any questions online, Carla? Nope. Well, with that, Tim, I'll say thank you very much again for taking the time to be with us today and also on Tuesday. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to working with you on the Notify project in the coming.
Excellent. Yeah, us too. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So I said, I don't know, Fabio, if you can put up my slides again. And I'm just going to do just a very quick, like what are we going to do in this project? What is our approach, and what are we going to do for the next 4 years? So I can probably say it without my slides, but I might miss something. Yeah, so this is from our project proposal. Was there one slide before this, Fabio? Or yeah, and then before that? No, okay, the next one is perfect. Yeah, so the aim really is to have Notify implemented as widely as possible over the next 4 years. So in order to do that, we have identified 4 dimensions. So it's not just about technical implementation, it's about working with partners that have real problems they're trying to solve, like Tim presented to us just now. And so the 4 dimensions are working with the open source software platforms to do the development. So Notify can be used by any institution that's using those software platforms. And I think that's critical because, again, we don't want to just have a few services using Notify. We want all of the repository community to be able to have access to the new functionality. So that's one dimension. The second dimension is working with some very high profile services. So we heard interaction services. So we heard already from PCI, who is working with HAL and some other repositories. We heard CSIC and Pandelis and the Overlay Journal. And so that is a WordPress interaction with the repository. We are working with Humanities Commons and Kathleen Fitzpatrick, and that will be also one of our very high profile implementations, because Arcadia is very interested in this being adopted in the humanities in particular. And so those are the three that I would mention right now, although the idea is to expand beyond those three after the initial implementation. The third dimension is the national implementations and regional implementations. So we heard from Lotaro. We feel the Latin American use case is very important, and we have a good trusted partner with La Referencia. We have our French colleagues who we've begun some discussions with. They are, as you know, are already implementing at HAL and some of the, and Epicence and PCI. So can that be extended to their research data repositories or national domain repositories and so on. And then the final dimension is a community building aspect. So we've all heard that that saying, you know, if you build it, they will come. Well, we're not just going to rely on building it. We're going to try to engage very much with certain communities. And the two communities that we're going to focus on are the biosciences, which is already involved in some of the work, they're already used to depositing preprints in bioarchive and so on. So that's one community. And the second community is the humanities and social sciences community. And there we have partners with Kathleen at Humanities Commons, who she said there are, I can't remember how many users she said she had, 30,000 or something. I mean, she represents Humanities Commons represents a huge community. But we've also been talking to Operas, which is the large European community of humanities and social scientists in Europe, and also Claxco in Latin America. So those community building and engagement, that aspect of the project will come later, after we have some real stable implementations of the Notify protocol. So next slide. Okay, I don't think we need to go through this. I'm going to send a copy of the proposal to all of the core members, so you'll be able to see our objectives. But here is our timeline. So we're going to start with the initial development. I mean, there's already some development that's been made already. So we're going to start with the initial development with certain with DSpace. So we're going to ramp that up with PCI and some of our early implementers. In year 2, we will continue that development. And one of the key things that I think is missing in the ecosystem that we put into the funding proposal is to develop an open source overlay journal platform, which might interest you, Pandela. So whether that is a WordPress or based in another product, what we're going to do is fund the development of an open source journal platform, so that it will be that kind of functionality will be much more widely available to researchers and communities who want to use it. So in you know, and then the year 3 is just sort of really refining what we've been doing, expanding to more partners who are interested, developing, getting the workflows developed, stabilizing the protocol, because as Masaharu mentioned, you know, there are some outside use cases that might mean we have to change what kind of information is being sent back and forth in the protocol, and that's Paul and Martin and Herbert and Patrick's responsibility. And then we will wrap up in year 4. So those are our plans. It's very exciting. Am I going backwards? Anyway, I think that's basically it. I don't know what those slides are. They must be Paul's slides. But so I think this is, thank you again for attending the conference. It's been wonderful. Thank you for all the people online. We're really excited about this project. And I think maybe this is the right time to wrap up our meeting. I know some people have to go to the airport and so on. So I'd like to invite Martha and Isabel and Agnes to come up to the front, please. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Martha.
I just wanted to add some words of thanks to all of you, but also to pick up on something Kathleen just said in the last presentation about community. So, we're all members of different communities in our home organizations and our home countries. And I've been so struck by the importance of this community. When you think about the very practical conversations that we've had about repositories and how we improve our work together, that's been an important element of this. The big picture, the strategies that we talked about in the first day have been really important, and just that sense of getting to know each other and following up on various projects. So I wanted to thank our hosts for providing such a wonderful community to us. So Agnes and Isabel, you have done just such a fabulous job of preparing us for this. So we have a small token of appreciation for you from wonderful people. And we wanted to invite you to say the final word. Yes. Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Yay! Some flowers for your family to enjoy over the weekend. I just wanted to say also that, it's not easy coming out of the pandemic and sticking your neck out and having an in-person meeting. So again, thank you so much for your bravery to host us this year. We really appreciate it. And yeah. So we'll leave the last word to you, Isabel.
I think it's been a great pleasure, and we are very proud to having hosted the annual meeting this year. It's true, it's been a preparation full of challenges, full of unseen difficulties, but I think it's been completely worth it. The meeting has been fantastic. I think content-wise, very inspiring. I learned a lot. Great participation. Also, all our remote participants. I think, we were not only the people here. Of course, we apologize for any technical problem we may have had. But I think, it's been very, very good. We are very happy. And if you want to say the latest. There you go.
Okay, thank you very much. I think just to say it's been a pleasure for CSIC to host you, all of you here in Madrid. Hope you had good days, even hot ones, not because of the discussions, but also because of the weather. And that was not expected, but it's climate change. It's a real thing. So just to finish, I wish COAR good success in that Notify project, and because it's very challenging project, but I hope in 4 years that will be a reality in all kind of open access repositories or open access landscape. So thank you very much, and have a nice trip home, or if you stay in Madrid, enjoy it. Thank you.